Yo, my man.
Fyjo mommy. Subscribe. Well done.
This is our
Yes,
beautiful guest, Yasmin, today.
thank you for inviting me. So, yeah, my name is Yasmin. I'm 27 years old. Actually, my mom is from Togo. My dad is German, but I grew up here and I still live here in Germany. Right now, I'm a master's student. I study Chinese language and translation. And besides, I'm also a freelancer model. And sometimes I work for African fashion designers to promote African fashion, African culture here in Germany.
So, Yasmin, why are you dressing like a Chinese bride?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, actually, my husband is Chinese.
Oh,
Yeah, that's why I own this garment. Yeah, this is a qipao, so it's a traditional Chinese dress. And yeah, my husband bought it in Beijing in China.
wow. It's a
Yeah,
very
today it's
interesting combination of Chinese and African culture. I love this combination.
it's some turban, and maybe some of you have seen it on some. I think in Nigeria it's quite popular to use the traditional clothes and make like this big kind of head
Yes.
wraps. And also my mom used to do some head wraps at home.
So it is actually very rare to have marriage, family relationship, or family unions between Africa and China. Nowadays, there are much more and more. So far, it's still like it's very rare to see this combination, especially on social media. So that's why I find your story especially interesting. So your mother is Togolese, your father is German, and your husband is Chinese. It's like a small United Nation within yourself.
Yes, so yeah, my mom used to live in Togo. She was also born there and lived there most of her life. And my father was in Germany, but he liked to travel a lot. So he made a kind of West Africa travel all around West African countries with his car, and that's when he ended up in Togo somehow and met my mom. And afterwards, my mom decided to follow him to Germany.
So how's your mother finding the life in Germany? It must be very different from the life in Togo.
Yes, yes. She also says that at the beginning it was quite challenging and quite difficult for her. She had a culture shock uh, when she came here first because she was used to like the Togolese community. Everybody is together. You have like relatives and friends in the house all the time. And when she came here in Germany, she was like quite alone. She felt lonely for the first time. So yeah, now she's already lives here for more than 20 years, and so she already adapted quite well to the German lifestyle, I would say. But of course, she still do some Togolese cooking at home and always like talk to her relatives.
Tell me about your Chinese husband. That is quite interesting combination, like I said before, which is so far still quite rare to see.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's very rare. Yeah, especially in Germany. I don't know another couple like this. Yeah. He's from China, from southwest of China. The province is called Sichuan, and his hometown is a rather small town in the mountains, you could say.
Mm.
It's where he comes from, and he studied in Shanghai, but he also had one abroad semester in Germany, and that's how I met him.
Yeah, so you told me the story when you met, you actually met in church, which is a very holy
Yes.
place to meet. It's almost like your marriage is blessed by God in some way.
Yeah, it was a very small but international church in the city where I did my bachelor studies. So in this church we had all different kinds of cultures already, like Chinese foreign students, students from Nigeria, from Germany, from different European countries. So it's a kind of melting pot. He kept coming to the church and we kept meeting there.
So how about your parents' reaction of you having a Chinese husband?
Yeah, fortunately, my parents are both very welcoming. They never expected me to marry within a certain culture, within a certain race. So they were always open about that. And yeah, when they first hear about it, they were both happy and welcoming. My mom like visited me in the church once, and at that time my husband was there too. That's when she met him first. So, and at that time she already liked him.
How do you know she liked him?
Like afterwards, yeah, we were talking about my friends in the church, like my Chinese friends, and she was already like, "Oh, I think this guy is very nice. The character seems very genuine. What do you think? Maybe it could be more than a
Oh,
friendship." And at that time, I didn't have this idea.
oh my God. So at that time, you were not even like paying attention to your current husband. Basically, it was just a friend of yours.
Yeah. Yes.
But your mother already saw the potential.
Yes.
It's
Exactly.
very
She already
interesting.
saw the hobby potential.
Wow. Before you met your husband, you told me you're already interested in Chinese or Asian culture. Where is
Yeah.
that interest come from? Because in a small village in Germany, I suppose there's not so much exposure to Asian culture.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think there was not a certain moment where it came from, but probably the fact that I always been in a quite international church with missionaries who went in different countries, like in Asian countries, and always like talked about their experiences there. I think that's when the interest was started. Yeah.
Wow. And you told me before you met your husband, you already been to China, and from then on, you started more interested in Chinese men, in a sense, to pay more attention to Chinese.
Before I didn't know that much about China because in Germany, we don't learn much about it in school, for example. Most people are more interested, like in Japan, because the culture is famous all around the world. So I didn't know that much. Um, what I know was like from movies, maybe the landscape, the fighting. That's all. I was actually sent to China during a mission trip. When I came to China, I was very positively surprised. Experienced a great openness and hospitality. Like they were very open and curious towards me as a foreigner, very direct in talking to me, and yeah, always very friendly. So that was my first impression. When I came to China, I noticed that yeah, it's especially the Chinese culture which I like, and also especially the Chinese food. The open mentality of the people was something that really stood out to me and that I fell in love with very fast.
It's very interesting because lots of people had the impression for Chinese is that Chinese usually are very closed and shy, not
Yeah,
communicative. Was that also your first impression?
yeah, maybe that's what I also thought before, that they would be maybe a little like reserved, maybe shy. But yeah, actually, the opposite was happening. Yeah, I was surprised by the openness.
You were born and raised in Germany. Have you ever
Yes,
get a chance to go back to your mother's village and in Togo?
yes, yeah. Fortunately, when I was a child, I have been to Togo several times, and then I've been there the last time when I was 20 years old. So I
Okay.
also had the chance to go and visit my mom's relatives.
Even though your mom is from Togo, but when you go back to Togo, it's almost like a foreign land because you never grow up in Togo or
Yeah.
live your life long enough to get familiar with the culture and also the country. So I wonder, like, when you go to China as a foreign land and also when you go to Togo as foreign land, what is the comparison?
When I came first to China, I was reminded of my time in Togo. Although it was a long time ago, I found so many similarities. I was like, oh, this is
Wow.
like back in Togo. Yeah, for example, The food. You have all the spicy food. You have the rice. That's exactly what we ate in Togo back then. And also the chicken feet, for example.
Oh,
Yeah, it was very strange to my other classmates to see chicken feet on a plate. But for me, it was like, oh yeah, I saw that in Togo. We used to eat it. Nothing new. Yeah, also there are big similarities when you go to the Chinese countryside, like to the small villages. You also you see that they are quite poor, and sometimes they don't have that much electricity or modernity, like tap water, all these kind of stuff we know in the West. They don't have, and in many African remote villages, it's actually the same. So they have a quite similar lifestyle, I would say. From the culture, I also saw the similarity, like the openness and the hospitality too. Like as a foreigner, like as a new friend, you are accepted very fast. You get invited for dinner. Everybody's curious about you. Yeah, that's also what I experienced both in China and Togo.
so when you go back to Togo now, how do the locals think of you? Do they think of you are one of them, or do they think of you are more or less a little bit different?
Yeah, actually in Togo they call me foreigner too. And even white foreigner, so that's very interesting. Like they see me more of a white person.
That's very interesting. Can you tell me your trip back to Togo?
And now it's quite a long time ago,
Mm,
but what we did was we spent some time in the main village,
mm,
like in Lome it's called.
mm,
And yeah, that was quite similar to the modern cities in Germany too, because it's a big city. You have cars, you have everything. And but we also spent a few days in the village of my mom, which is
mm,
very different, like which
mm.
is a remote area and which is very poor. It's actually on a mountain, so you can only go there with a car. You have to drive up the whole mountain, and then when you arrive there, it's in the middle of the rainforest. It's
Wow.
very humid and hot weather, and the people live in very simple houses. They usually build them themselves. They are very simple, and they don't have the electricity in their own houses. They also don't have the tap water, so they have to collect the water every day by themselves. They also have to wash their clothes, like in the river, and usually buy their food on the markets or have animals themselves.
Well, it does sound like a small village in China, in remote place, especially the part where they wash their clothes by the river.
Yeah, yeah, and also like yeah, have their own animals, have their own little farm. That's what I saw in many Chinese villages too.
Okay, so how do you find the people? Similarities in the people that you encountered in the small villages?
Yeah, like when we arrived to the village, everyone will be very curious, very excited, like shouting at us, like, "Oh, foreigners are coming, whites are coming!" And when I when I came to a Chinese village, for example, there were also many people like pointing at me and like, "Oh, it's a foreigner," like and asking me, "Oh, where you come from? Can we take a picture together?" So yes, it was a similar experience.
It's almost like the same scenario happened in two different locations, but it's
I would say
actually
so.
the same story.
Yeah, I would say so.
Wow.
Definitely.
Like you are like the embodiment of these two different cultures, African culture and Chinese culture. And you have a lot to say, to offer to us from your perspective, the similarities and differences, because most of us, we don't have the experience from both sides, or even including the side from Germany as a European. So it's very interesting to see your opinion to analyze these two different cultures.
Yeah, like as a European, I definitely see more similarities between Togo and China because I always compare it like to my Western standard. But of course, there are also some differences. Yeah, I would say, for example, the role that religion plays in the people's daily life. Yeah, in at least in Togo, I think religion plays a big role in the people's life. They like most people in Togo are Christian, and they go to church every Sunday. It's like the most important day of the week. They dress up, they have a big lunch together, have a big celebration, and also in their daily life, they will pray, they will read the Bible, they will focus a lot on that. And I think in China it's quite different because the like the government is more atheistic, so what they learn in school is usually not about religion, and so that's also how they grow up, and they will usually not practice a certain religion that
Okay.
way. Yeah,
So
maybe some people like in the village they still have their beliefs, I think, but especially in the big cities, it's not that usual. Like what was strange to my mom is the fact that my husband cooks better than me. But I think in China it's quite normal that the men also cook. Maybe probably in Togo usually it's the wife who is responsible like for cooking. But in our marriage it's definitely my husband who cooks better.
Oh, wow. But like usually man from where your husband come from is famous for cooking very well, like being a good chef
Yes,
and also
yes,
good
yes.
husband.
Okay.
You told me once when you were in China, actually Chinese thought you were Chinese girl, and they would speak
Ah,
Chinese
yeah.
to you. Can you
Yeah,
tell me that
that
story?
happened. Yeah, that actually happened in my husband's hometown. Yeah, as I said, it's like a rather small town in the mountains, but it's also like the main city of one Chinese minority. It's called the E minority, and these people are actually quite different from the typical Han Chinese that we know. Like they have a much darker skin color, different costumes, and so when I was there, I think many people assumed that I belong to this minority. So, like for example, in the supermarket, some old lady just asked me to help her with her grocery shopping, just talk directly to me in Chinese. So I think she assumed that I'm maybe some E minority girl.
Yeah, because actually when I show your picture to one of my friends, and he also thought you have a Chinese parent, like at least one of your
Ah,
parents is Chinese.
that's interesting.
So tell me about your marriage life with a Chinese man.
Because I lived in China before, so it's not completely strange to me. And I think so we don't have big issues to deal with. What I like, especially, yeah, is the good food I get every day from German husbands. I think. I guess most of them don't cook at all, and also I think Chinese husbands are very. They pay a lot of attention to the wife's need. Like they have this idea to give her a lot of care.
Very attentive.
Yes, yeah, that's what I want to say.
I think we've covered most of the topics we want to talk about today. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think right now I'm a little worried that the relationship between China and African countries is getting worse and is very tense at the moment. So that makes me sad. And I really want to point out that actually we have so much in common and we should more focus on that. We could improve it by like learning more about each other's cultures because in many people's minds there are a lot of prejudices and also they just don't know about the other, just haven't learned it in school or just haven't had never met maybe like a black person or a Chinese person. So I think we should learn more about each other, like be open, and then we can also discover that actually we have much more in common than we thought maybe. Yeah, we should always like be open towards each other and yeah, not focus on what we hear in the media maybe, like make our own experience.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I have a really great time talking and also knowing your stories. I'm going to put the link down below of your Instagram so also more people can see your exhibition and modeling of African haute couture.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to talk with you.